My son-in-law accused me of theft, then my grandchildren saw the truth. True story. Have you ever poured your entire being into someone, only to have them casually discard you when a new person enters their life? Have you ever felt the agonizing silence from your own child when you needed them most? Have you ever felt the agonizing silence from your own child when you needed them most? Have you ever felt the agonizing silence from your own child when you needed them most? Have you ever watched the child you devoted your life to cast you aside for the person they married? Have you seen them stand by, silent, as you were torn down, humiliated, by someone who was supposed to be family? I have. And for a long time, I let it happen. I let the sting of their indifference, the barb of their words, pierce me over and over again, each wound a fresh cut on an already bruised soul. My quietness was mistaken for weakness, my patience for passivity. They thought I was a forgotten chapter, a faded memory, easily overwritten. But they didn't know I would be the one to write the final chapter of their story. They didn't know the quiet woman they thought they could walk all over had a strength, a resolve, forged in years of silent suffering, waiting for the perfect moment to ignite. And ignite it did. The air in Lyra's living room that Sunday afternoon was thick with the scent of roasted chicken and simmering resentment, a potent, almost tangible mix that tightened my chest. We had just finished a lovely family lunch, or what appeared to be lovely on the surface. The polished silverware gleamed under the afternoon light, the crystal glasses chimed with laughter, mostly from the children. Orion, my 10-year-old grandson, with his mop of sandy hair and curious eyes, and Celeste, my 8-year-old granddaughter, a whirlwind of bright pink and boundless energy. Were chattering excitedly about the antique display cabinet I'd gifted Lyra and Kaylin for their anniversary. It was a beautiful piece, mahogany, with intricate carvings that told silent stories of generations past, something I'd inherited from my own grandmother. I had spent weeks carefully restoring it, polishing the wood until it gleamed, tightening the delicate brass hinges. I imagined it would bring a touch of history and elegance to their modern, minimalist home, a connection to the past in their sleek, contemporary present. Kaylin, my son-in-law, had been oddly quiet throughout lunch, his usual boisterous charm muted, his eyes frequently darting towards the cabinet in the corner, a glint of something I couldn't quite decipher in their depths. I should have known then that something was brewing, something beneath the surface of his feigned pleasantries. Kaylin was never truly quiet unless he was scheming, unless he was calculating his next move. He always had an agenda, always. He had this way of looking at things, not for their beauty or sentimental value, but for what they could yield, what tangible benefit they could offer him. It was a cold, calculating gaze that always made my stomach clench, a knot of unease forming deep within me. After dessert, while Celeste and Orion were showing off a new drawing they'd made, a colorful, abstract depiction of their grandmother's garden, Kaylin strode over to the cabinet. His movements were abrupt, possessive, as if he couldn't wait another moment to claim its secrets. He didn't ask if anyone wanted to look, he just did it, as if it were already his property, which, of course, it was now legally. But there was a possessiveness in his movements that was unsettling, a sense of ownership that extended beyond mere possession. He ran his hands over the polished wood, his fingers tracing the delicate carvings, not with appreciation, but with a palpable sense of seeking, of searching. And then, with a sharp, almost triumphant click that echoed unnaturally in the suddenly quiet room, he revealed a hidden compartment. It was a clever mechanism, a spring-loaded panel tucked behind a false back, one I hadn't even known about myself until I was cleaning it out before the move, meticulously preparing it for its new home. My grandmother, bless her heart, had always had a knack for secrets, for tucking away treasures in unexpected places. Inside, nestled on a velvet lining that I had carefully placed there, was a small, intricately carved wooden box. It was the same box I had carefully placed there just a few weeks prior, my heart filled with a very different kind of anticipation. My heart started to pound a little faster now, a premonition of something ill about to unfold. Kaylin's eyes gleamed as he pulled the box out. He didn't look at me, he didn't look at Lyra. His gaze was fixed solely on the box, his expression a mixture of greed and triumph, as if it held the secrets to the universe, or more accurately, the secrets to his personal fortune. He lifted the lid, and gasps rippled through the room, not from awe, but from the sudden, sharp intake of breath as the contents were revealed. The box was filled with what appeared to be dozens, perhaps even hundreds, of rare, uncirculated vintage coins. They glinted under the afternoon light, a rainbow of metallic hues: gold, silver, copper, their sheen promising untold value, whispering of history and untold riches. Orion and Celeste, drawn by the commotion and the irresistible allure of something new and shiny, peered over his shoulder, their young faces alight with wonder, their innocent curiosity a stark contrast to the greed on Kaelin's face. Lyra, my own daughter, came closer, her steps hesitant, a flicker of curiosity, and then something else, something I couldn't quite place, in her eyes. Was it fear? A recognition of the storm about to break? Or perhaps, even then, a dawning realization of her own complicity? Then Kaelin turned, his face contorted into a mask of righteous fury, a performance honed over years of subtle manipulation, his voice booming, "Alara, how could you?" The sudden accusation hung in the air, thick and suffocating, choking the very breath from my lungs. My name, spat out like venom, felt alien on his tongue. My breath caught in my throat, a sharp, painful constriction. "These coins," he continued, holding the box aloft like a weapon, letting the coins shimmer and clink, a mocking tune, "these priceless, vintage coins. You gave us this cabinet, didn't you? And you knew these were in here, didn't you? You took some, didn't you? Or maybe we're planning to come back for all of them once we'd moved it in. Trying to defraud us, Alara? Trying to steal from your own family." Each word was a calculated blow, delivered with precision, designed to inflict maximum pain, maximum humiliation. His words were like a physical blow, each one designed to inflict maximum pain, maximum humiliation, designed to break me down in front of my own family. My grandchildren looked from Kaelin's furious, red face to me, their innocent faces etched with confusion, then disbelief, then a dawning comprehension that something terrible was happening, something deeply wrong. Orion's brow furrowed, his young mind trying to process the magnitude of his grandfather's baseless accusation. Celeste's eyes welled up, her lower lip trembling, a single tear tracing a path down her cheek. The silence in the room was deafening, broken only by Kaelin's heavy, agitated breathing and the faint, menacing clinking of the coins as he gestured wildly, punctuating his accusations. He was putting on a performance, a grand spectacle of outrage, designed not to seek justice, but to shame me publicly, to strip me of my dignity in front of the people I loved most. My gaze instinctively darted to Lyra, my daughter, my only child. The one I had raised, sacrificed for, loved unconditionally, with every fiber of my being. She stood there, frozen, a statue of inaction. Her eyes, usually so expressive, so full of warmth and life, were wide and unblinking, fixed on her husband, a deer caught in headlights. Her shoulders were hunched, her hands clasped tightly in front of her, as if physically bracing herself against the storm Kaelin had unleashed. She didn't speak. She didn't move. She didn't defend me. Not a single word of protest, not a whisper of doubt about Kaelin's outrageous claims. Not a single question to Kaelin, not even a hesitant, "Wait, dear, let's hear Mom out." Nothing. Just a profound, chilling silence that spoke volumes, a silence that screamed of abandonment. It was that silence, more than Kaelin's venomous words, that truly broke something inside me, a fragile part of my heart that had clung to hope. It was the final, undeniable proof that I was alone, truly alone, in this family, at least where Kaelin was concerned. And Lyra, my own flesh and blood, was letting it happen. The betrayal was absolute, a bitter taste in my mouth. And you think this was the first time? Oh, if only. If only that Sunday afternoon were an isolated incident, a singular, regrettable outburst born of misunderstanding. But no, this was merely the crescendo of a symphony of disrespect that had been playing for years, building note by painful note, a slow, agonizing erosion of my spirit. It began subtly, almost imperceptibly, after Lyra and Kaylin got married. Before him, Lyra and I had been inseparable. We talked daily, sometimes for hours, sharing the minutiae of our lives, confiding our deepest secrets, laughing until our sides hurt over silly jokes no one else would understand. She was my confidant, my best friend, the daughter I had always dreamed of. We had a bond that felt unbreakable, forged in shared experiences, mutual respect, and unconditional love. But then Kaylin entered the picture, a whirlwind of charm and ambition, a man who seemed to sweep Lyra off her feet with grand gestures and promises of a glittering future. And slowly, insidiously, he began to insert himself between us, like a wedge driven into solid wood, splintering our connection. I remember one of the first times I felt it, like a cold draft creeping under a closed door, a premonition of what was to come. It was Lyra's first birthday after they were married, a day I had always made special. I had spent weeks knitting her a beautiful, intricate shawl, a delicate lace pattern she had admired for months in a magazine. I poured my love into every stitch, envisioning her wrapped in its warmth, a tangible symbol of my affection. When I presented it to her, she gasped with genuine delight, embracing me tightly, her eyes sparkling with appreciation. But then Kaylin walked in, took one dismissive look at the handcrafted garment, and said, with a smirk that never quite reached his eyes, "Oh, a shawl? How practical." I got her a diamond pendant, Alara. Something she can actually show off. It was a subtle jab, a calculated remark designed to diminish my thoughtful gift and, by extension, my love and effort. He wasn't just comparing gifts, he was comparing our value, our places in Lyra's life. Lyra just smiled weakly, a faint blush creeping up her neck, and mumbled something about how much she loved both. But the damage was done. My gift felt cheapened, my effort dismissed, and the warmth of her earlier embrace seemed to dissipate. And Lyra, my daughter, didn't correct him. She didn't say, "Mom's gift is beautiful and means the world to me." She just let it hang there, a slight against me, and I felt a tiny piece of our connection fray, like a loose thread in a once perfect tapestry. Over the years, these incidents piled up, each one a small but significant blow. Kaylin had this uncanny ability to make me feel small, insignificant, and often an inconvenience, as if my very presence was a burden. He'd make snide remarks about my cooking, even though Lyra had always raved about my pot roasts and apple pies, claiming they tasted of home and comfort. "A little heavy on the salt, aren't we, Alara?" He'd say at family dinners, loud enough for everyone to hear, making me self-conscious about every meal I ever brought over, questioning my own abilities. Or he'd openly critique my taste in decor, even when I was just visiting their house, a guest in what felt increasingly like a hostile territory. "That vase you gave us, Mom? It just doesn't quite fit the aesthetic, does it, Lyra?" Lyra would nod, her gaze avoiding mine, a faint blush on her cheeks, and then quietly move the offending item to a less prominent spot when Kaylin wasn't looking, a silent concession that spoke volumes. It was always a quiet concession, never a defense of me. Never a direct challenge to his disrespect. It was as if she was constantly tiptoeing around him, trying to keep the peace at my expense, sacrificing my feelings for his comfort. I became the helpful grandmother who was always there to babysit, but never truly appreciated, my time and generosity taken for granted. "Oh, Alara's free, isn't she?" Kaylin would say to Lyra, not even bothering to ask me directly, when they wanted a night out with friends, a weekend getaway, or a last-minute theater trip. And Lyra would call, her voice tinged with a faint apology that never quite reached her eyes. "Mom, Kaylin and I were hoping you could watch the kids tonight. Just for a few hours." It wasn't an invitation, a request that could be declined. It was an expectation, a duty I was simply presumed to fulfill. And I always said yes, because I loved my grandchildren fiercely, with a devotion that transcended the pain of their parents' indifference. Those hours with Orion and Celeste were the only times I felt truly valued, truly loved within their home, the only moments where Kaylin's shadow didn't loom. But I was also acutely aware that I was being taken for granted, my time and generosity considered a given, not a cherished gift, not a freely offered act of love. One Christmas, I spent weeks hand-making unique, personalized gifts for each family member, channeling my love and creativity into every project. For Kalen, I knitted a custom scarf in his favorite football team's colors, meticulously researching the exact shades and logo. When he unwrapped it, he held it up, scoffed, and said, with a dismissive wave of his hand, "Oh, handmade." "Right. Thanks." He then proceeded to rave, at length and with much fanfare, about the expensive watch Lyra had bought him, completely eclipsing my gift. My scarf was never worn. I saw it weeks later crumpled at the bottom of a laundry basket, a forgotten, unwanted item. Lyra saw it too, I know she did. Our eyes met across the room, and I saw a pained expression flicker across her face, a brief moment of shared sorrow. But again, she said nothing. The silence was deafening, a tangible weight in the room. It was the sound of my daughter slowly, painfully drifting away, becoming a puppet on Kalen's strings, her own voice and opinions increasingly muffled. He was always the priority, his comfort, his preferences, his opinion, the ultimate authority. Mine, if considered at all, was secondary, at best, often dismissed entirely. The worst part was watching Lyra change. The vibrant, independent young woman I had raised, full of laughter and strong opinions, started to shrink. Her laughter became less frequent, her opinions softer, almost whispered, as if she feared the sound of her own voice. She looked to Kalen for approval before speaking, her eyes constantly searching his face for a reaction, a subtle nod, a flicker of acceptance. It was heartbreaking to witness, like watching a flower wither before your very eyes. I tried to talk to her, gently at first, approaching the subject with caution. "Lyra, are you truly happy?" "Kalen, he seems to dominate conversations, doesn't he?" She'd just shrug or say, with a practiced dismissiveness, "Oh, Mom, that's just how Kalen is. You know him. He's very direct." Direct? He was dismissive, condescending, and often downright cruel, cloaking his insults in the guise of honesty. But she couldn't see it, or perhaps she didn't want to see it, shielding herself from an uncomfortable truth. Or maybe, and this was the fear that kept me up at night, coiling in my stomach like a cold snake, she was just too afraid to confront him. Afraid of his anger, his cutting remarks, his power over her, a power he wielded with chilling precision. I remember once, when I was recovering from a particularly bad flu, feeling weak and vulnerable, Lyra offered to come over and help around my house, to bring me groceries, to simply be there. I was so touched, a flicker of hope reigniting within me, a belief that our old bond wasn't entirely severed. But then Kalen called, his voice booming through the phone even from a distance. "Honey, you're not going to your mother's, are you? We have that golf reservation. Besides, she'll manage. She's always managed." His words were a casual dismissal of my needs, a confident assertion of my perpetual self-sufficiency, but beneath it, I heard the thinly veiled command. And Lyra, my kind, thoughtful daughter, called me back 5 minutes later, her voice thin and apologetic, laced with a familiar strain. "Mom, something's come up. I'm so sorry." I could hear the faint echo of Kalen's voice in the background, a low murmur of disapproval, a clear indication of who truly held sway. It was then I understood, with a clarity that pierced me to the core. Her loyalty had shifted. Her primary allegiance was no longer to me, but to him. It was a cold, hard truth that settled deep in my bones, chilling me more than any flu ever could. I was a second-class citizen in my own daughter's life. A burden, a nuisance, someone to be tolerated, not cherished, not prioritized. The Zygarnik effect was at play in my own mind, I realize now. Every slight, every cutting remark, every moment of Lyra's silence became an open loop in my memory. They weren't resolved, they weren't forgotten. They festered, each one a tiny barb, slowly poisoning my spirit. They built up, layer upon painful layer, like sediment accumulating at the bottom of a deep lake. And as they accumulated, so did a quiet, simmering resolve within me. A determination that one day, this imbalance would be righted. That one day, they would understand the true cost of their disregard, the price of their complacency. The curiosity gap was in their minds, too, I now understand. They saw my quietness, my acceptance, my lack of outward rebellion, and presumed it meant weakness. They wondered, perhaps, why I didn't fight back, why I didn't shout, why I didn't defend myself. They didn't realize I was simply waiting. Waiting for the perfect moment. Waiting for their moment of hubris, when they would overstep so significantly that the very foundation beneath them would crumble, exposing their true nature to the world. And that Sunday afternoon, with Kaylin's baseless accusations echoing in the living room, that moment arrived, not with a whimper, but with a roar. But they didn't know about the final secret my late husband, Arthur, left me. Or perhaps, more accurately, the secret wisdom he imparted. Arthur was a man of immense foresight and quiet generosity, a man who understood the long game. He believed in preparing for the future, in providing for those we loved, often in ways that weren't immediately obvious, in gifts that unfolded over time. He had a passion for numismatics, the study and collection of coins, a hobby he pursued with meticulous dedication. He acquired rare pieces not for their immediate market value, though he was certainly aware of it, but for their historical significance, their potential as a long-term investment for future generations, and the sheer joy of the hunt, the thrill of discovery. He taught me the value of patience, of careful planning, of quiet determination. Ilara, he'd often say, his eyes twinkling, true wealth isn't always loud and flashy. Sometimes it's hidden in plain sight, waiting for the right moment to be discovered, and more importantly, waiting for the right reason to be revealed. After Arthur passed, his coin collection, a substantial portion of it, became mine. He left it to me specifically, with a note that read, for future generations, to secure their dreams and perhaps spark their curiosity for history. Use it wisely, my love. I had kept the collection safe, tucked away in a bank vault, a secret burden and a profound responsibility, waiting for that right reason to emerge. I watched Orion and Celeste grow, their bright minds constantly questioning, constantly exploring, their potential shining like beacons. Orion, with his love for history and his budding fascination with anything old, anything with a story to tell. Celeste, with her artistic flair and her uncanny ability to find beauty in the forgotten, in the mundane. I saw their potential, their eagerness to learn, their boundless curiosity, and I knew what Arthur would have wanted. He would have wanted their education to be secure, their pathways unburdened by financial worries, free to pursue their passions. He always believed in giving people a strong start, not a handout, but a solid foundation upon which they could build their own futures. So, for months, I had been working with a trusted financial advisor, a woman named Ms. Davies, converting portions of Arthur's coin collection into a bespoke educational trust for Orion and Celeste. It was a complex process involving painstaking appraisals of each coin, careful sales to reputable collectors, and then the strategic reinvestment into a fund specifically designed for their university education, managed with conservative growth in mind. The small, intricately carved wooden box Kaylin had found, it wasn't full of the entire collection. That was safely secured and diversified. It was a symbolic gesture, a tangible representation of the seed money, a small, carefully selected batch of coins that hadn't been sold yet, specifically chosen to spark their interest, to be a visual reminder of the legacy they would inherit. Each coin was accompanied by a small, laminated card detailing its historical significance, its place in time, and its estimated value, a miniature lesson in history and economics. I had already set up the trust, completed all the paperwork, and had a formal agreement drawn up, detailing the terms of the fund's access, upon their 18th birthday, provided they pursued higher education, a gentle nudge towards their future. I had planned to surprise them, a grand reveal at their joint birthday party later that year, a joyful occasion where I would explain the history behind the coins, the purpose of the fund, and the immense love that had gone into its creation. a testament to their grandfather's foresight and my continued dedication. I wanted it to be a moment of joy, of wonder, of generational connection. But Kalen's accusation, his blatant greed, his public shaming, that was the moment everything shifted, irrevocably. The meticulous planning, the quiet anticipation of a joyful reveal, shattered under the weight of his venom. My initial shock quickly morphed into a cold, clear resolve, a steeling of my spirit. This wasn't just about me anymore. This was about defending Arthur's legacy, about protecting my grandchildren from their grandfather's insidious influence, from the insidious lesson of greed he was trying to impart. And about finally, making Lyra see the true colors of the man she had chosen over her own mother, over her own better judgment. The rage that had simmered beneath the surface for so long, the hurt of all those years of silent suffering, coalesced into a singular, unshakable decision. The surprise reveal was off. This wouldn't be a celebration of generosity. This would be a day of reckoning, a public unveiling of truth. This would be the day the truth, Arthur's truth, my truth, would be laid bare, like a devastating earthquake shaking the very foundations of their carefully constructed world, exposing the fault lines beneath. And then the day came. The day everything would be laid bare. It wasn't a grand family dinner or a formal while reading in a lawyer's office. It was that very Sunday afternoon, right there in Lyra's living room, amidst the lingering scent of roast chicken and the oppressive, suffocating silence that followed Kalen's accusation. My heart was still pounding, but it was no longer from fear. It was from a surge of righteous indignation, a power I hadn't felt in years, a resurgence of self. Kalen stood there, chest puffed out, holding the box of coins like a trophy, his eyes still narrowed at me, a self-satisfied glint in them. Orion and Celeste were clinging to Lyra's legs, their small faces pale with distress, their innocent eyes darting between their grandfather and me. Lyra, my daughter, still hadn't moved, her gaze fixed somewhere beyond me, anywhere but directly at my face, a posture of avoidance. "Are you quite finished, Kalen?" I asked, my voice surprisingly steady, devoid of the tremor I expected, the tremor he surely anticipated. It was a quiet question, but it cut through the tension like a razor, sharp and precise. Kalen blinked, taken aback by my composure. He had expected tears, stammering, perhaps a desperate plea for understanding, a capitulation. He certainly hadn't expected defiance, a quiet strength. "Finished?" he scoffed, recovering quickly, his bravado returning. "I've barely begun, Alara. What do you have to say for yourself? Caught red-handed, weren't you? Trying to pull a fast one on your own daughter and son-in-law? These coins are worth a fortune, and you were going to let us just discover them? And then probably claim them for yourself." He gestured with the box again, the coins clinking a mocking tune, a percussion to his accusation. I took a deep breath and then another, steadying myself, anchoring my resolve. My gaze swept over Lyra, lingering for a moment on her downcast eyes, eyes that refused to meet mine, then to my grandchildren, whose innocent faces were a potent reminder of why I was doing this, the true beneficiaries of my actions. Finally, my eyes settled on Kalen, holding his triumphant, arrogant gaze, unflinching. "On the contrary, Kalen," I said, my voice gaining strength with each word, each syllable a brick in the wall of truth I was building. "I was hoping they would be discovered, yes. But not by you, and certainly not under these circumstances." I reached into my handbag, which was sitting on the armchair beside me, a simple leather bag that had seen many years of loyal service, and pulled out a thick envelope. It was cream-colored, official-looking, embossed with the name of the law firm, and sealed with a wax stamp. Kalen's eyes darted to it, a flicker of suspicion replacing his self-satisfaction, a crack in his carefully constructed facade. Lyra finally looked up, her brow furrowed in confusion, a glimmer of something akin to curiosity in her gaze. Orion and Celeste, sensing a profound shift in the atmosphere, edged closer, their curiosity piqued, their young minds trying to comprehend the unfolding drama. "These coins," I continued, my voice clear and firm, resonating with a quiet authority that silenced any further interruption, "were indeed placed in that cabinet by me. but not for the reasons you so crudely suggest, reasons born of your own avarice. I pulled out a stack of documents from the envelope. These, I said, holding up a meticulously organized binder of records, thick with official stamps and signatures, are the appraisals and sale receipts for the majority of my late husband, Arthur's, coin collection. You see, Kaylin, Arthur was a passionate numismatist. He collected these coins, not for quick profit, but for their historical significance and as a long-term investment for the future, for his legacy. I paused, letting the information sink in, watching Kaylin's confident smirk waver, his carefully constructed reality beginning to crack. And this, I continued, pulling out a beautifully bound legal document, crisp and official, with the bold title Educational Trust Agreement, clearly visible, is a copy of the formal trust agreement, established 3 months ago, for Orion's and Celeste's educational fund. I held it up for them to see the official seal, the weighty signatures, the undeniable proof of its legitimacy. The proceeds from the sale of Arthur's collection have been carefully invested into this fund to ensure that their university education is secure, without financial burden, without debt. The small batch of coins in that box, I said, pointing to the box Kaylin still held, now less like a trophy and more like a hot potato, were simply a symbolic gesture. A way to introduce them to their grandfather's passion, to give them a tangible link to the legacy he left for them, a starting point for their own journey of discovery. I was going to surprise them on their birthday, explain the history, and present this fund to them then, as a testament to their grandfather's enduring love. My voice softened as I looked at Orion and Celeste, who were now staring at me with wide, astonished eyes, their faces reflecting a mixture of confusion and dawning understanding. Kaylin's face was a study in rapid-fire emotions. First, a flicker of disbelief, quickly followed by confusion, then dawning horror as the full implication hit him. The blood drained from his face, leaving him ashen, his complexion a sickly gray. His jaw went slack, hanging open in a silent gasp, and the hand holding the coin box trembled violently, almost dropping it, the precious coins suddenly worthless in his grasp. The realization of his egregious error, the sheer magnitude of his public humiliation of me, his false accusation, all of it crashed down on him like a tidal wave. He had accused me of theft, of fraud, of despicable greed, when I had been planning an act of immense generosity for his own children, his own flesh and blood. He had just publicly slandered me over my own money, intended for his kids. The irony was a bitter pill for him to swallow, a poison he had unwittingly brewed for himself. Lyra gasped. A sharp, audible intake of breath, as if she had been punched in the stomach, the wind knocked out of her. Her eyes, finally, met mine, and in them I saw it, not just shock, but profound shame, a crushing regret that twisted her features. The silence she had maintained, the way she had stood by, letting Kaylin tear me down, letting him poison the atmosphere, was now a gaping wound, exposed and festering. She saw not only Kaylin's monstrous error, his boundless cruelty, but her own complicity in it, her own failure to protect her mother. Her mother, her children's grandmother, had been planning such a beautiful, selfless gift, a legacy of love, and she had stood by while her husband accused her of the lowest possible crime, of treachery against her own family. The guilt was palpable, radiating off her in waves, a suffocating aura. Orion and Celeste, bless their innocent hearts, looked from Kaylin's horrified, ashen face to my calm, vindicated one, and then back to the trust agreement, its official pages gleaming with truth. Their grandmother, the one who had been accused of being a thief, was actually their silent benefactor, securing their future, preparing a path for their dreams. The enormity of my generosity and Kaylin's utterly despicable behavior was laid bare for them to witness, stripped of all pretense. The air crackled with the stark, undeniable truth. So where is my son-in-law who called me the maid now, you ask? Where is Kaylin, the man who reveled in public humiliation and believed that money was the ultimate measure of worth, the only currency that truly mattered? Well, his downfall wasn't immediate, but it was swift and absolute, an inevitable consequence of his own actions. The moment I laid out those documents, the truth hit him like a physical blow, knocking the breath from his lungs and the arrogance from his posture. The look on his face, the way his jaw worked, trying to form words that wouldn't come, trying to claw back some semblance of dignity, it was a sight I will never forget. He tried to backtrack, of course. Stammering, "Alara, I didn't know. This is a misunderstanding," I thought. But the words were hollow, ringing with insincerity, too little, too late. Orion, bless his sharp, observant mind, spoke up then, his voice small but clear, cutting through Kalen's feeble excuses. "Grandpa, you said Grandma was stealing from us. But she was giving us money for college." Celeste started to cry, not out of fear, but out of confusion and hurt, her small voice piercing the tension. Grandpa was mean to Grandma. That was the turning point. Kalen, for all his bluster, for all his carefully constructed image, was utterly undone by his own children witnessing his true nature, his cruelty, his unfounded accusations. The respect he desperately craved, the image of the successful, righteous man he meticulously cultivated, shattered into a million irreparable pieces right before his very eyes. Lyra, finally, found her voice, though it was barely a whisper, thick with tears and indignation. "Kalen, how could you? How could you accuse my mother of something so vile, so despicable, especially when she was doing this beautiful thing, for our children?" She finally saw him, not through the lens of her own fear or misplaced loyalty, but through the eyes of her humiliated mother and her confused, hurt children. That day marked the end of her blindness, the end of her silence. The aftermath was messy, as you can imagine, a tangled web of emotions and broken trust. Kalen's accusations, heard by my grandchildren, resonated through their small world, altering their perception of him forever. He became the mean grandpa in their innocent eyes, the one who unfairly hurt their kind grandmother, the one who was wrong. He tried to apologize to me, of course, but it was perfunctory, devoid of genuine remorse, too little, too late. The trust was irrevocably broken, not just for me, but for Lyra and the children. The public shaming he inflicted on me was reciprocated, not by my words or vengeful actions, but by the undeniable truth of his greed and my selfless generosity, a truth that spoke for itself. His social standing, particularly within Lyra's extended family and our shared community, took a significant, irreparable hit. The story, as these things do, quietly circulated, stripped of my generous intent and highlighting only his viciousness, his hubris. Business associates, who valued integrity and discretion, began to subtly distance themselves, sensing the rot beneath his polished exterior. His carefully constructed image, the very foundation of his self-worth, began to crumble, brick by painful brick. As for Lyra, the regret was a heavy burden, a constant companion that shadowed her days. We had many long, tearful conversations in the weeks and months that followed, conversations that were difficult but necessary, purging the years of unspoken pain. She expressed profound sorrow for her silence, for not defending me, for letting Kalen's behavior go unchecked for so long, for prioritizing his comfort over my dignity. She finally admitted her fear of him, her feeling of being trapped in a gilded cage, unable to break free. It was a difficult path, fraught with emotional pain and harsh truths, but it was also a path towards healing for us, a rebuilding of our fractured bond. She started setting boundaries with Kalen, asserting herself in ways I hadn't seen in years, reclaiming her voice, her independence. Their marriage, already strained by his controlling nature and her quiet acquiescence, suffered immensely under the weight of her newfound assertiveness and his exposed cruelty. I don't know the exact details of their private life, but I know Kalen eventually moved out, unable to live with the constant reminder of his public humiliation and Lyra's newfound strength. His carefully curated image was gone, and with it, much of his control, leaving him diminished and isolated. I, on the other hand, found a newfound peace, a quiet strength that settled deep within me. The burden of years of silent suffering lifted, replaced by a profound sense of vindication and liberation. I reclaimed my power, not through aggression or confrontation, but through truth and quiet strength, through the simple act of revealing what was always there. My relationship with Orion and Celeste is stronger than ever. They now know the true story of the coins and their grandfather Arthur's legacy, and they look at me with respect and a love that is pure and untainted by their father's influence. I am no longer the helpful grandmother, the convenient babysitter. I am simply Grandma Alara, loved and respected for who I am, for my wisdom, and for my unwavering love. The lesson they learned, and one I hope to share, is this: never test anyone's patience to its limits, for the quietest souls often hold the most potent truths, and when pushed too far, their reckoning can be seismic, shaking foundations and revealing what truly lies beneath. Are there any other mothers out there who have forgotten themselves for the sake of their children's happiness, only to be taken for granted or worse? Have you ever felt that agonizing silence from your own child when you needed them most? You are not alone. My channel has many similar stories of life lessons learned the hard way, of finding strength where you least expect it, and of reclaiming your peace. If you found solace or inspiration in my story, please consider subscribing to my channel. Turn on notifications so you don't miss new stories, and share your own troubles and thoughts in the comments below. Let's build a community where our voices are heard and our experiences can offer strength to others. Thank you for listening.